because we only recommend things to the board.
But
So,
you didn't get a sense that anything was wrong with that list.
No.
Okay, so
No. I mean, they mentioned that they're looking and themselves, and that's they knew staff were looking, and having reviewed the criteria, they just pointed out we probably won't be able to find the perfect property that checks every box on that list, but there's no reason why we couldn't find something that checks most of them. They asked, what might be most important, and I said the variety of difficulties and the length, that kind of first section of the document, and they kind of acknowledged in that meeting that maybe the landfill, the riverfront property, maybe wasn't going to check those boxes, so maybe they were going to reconsider the purpose of that potential new property being for cycling, at least for this criteria of cycling, but.
thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. Next item, committee member comments and updates. Cindy, why don't we start with you? Do you have anything?
Me? Not really. I was hoping to get out to the Wednesday markets again this year, but my Wednesdays are not cooperating. I'm still gonna try, but I just want to remind people who want to do that to let Kat Richter know in an email for insurance purposes. If you end up in that booth, it's good for her to know that, so she can write that down. And if anyone wants stickers to give to the people so they actually will, come into the booth and talk to you, I have some of those. So that's it.
Michelle?
No, I have nothing.
Matt?
No, sir.
Alan?
Quite a bit. I'm discouraged. You did the survey, and Matt presented it, and that was disregarded by the board. You made a second set of recommendations regarding temporary use of Riley Park with bicyclists, and that was ignored. And here we are. We got a month left in the term, and it doesn't seem like happy trails. And where do we stand? I mean, are they going to have a trails committee moving forward? And where are the applications to reapply? Where do we stand?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have to do the agenda in order. So I talked to Matt Smith, the president of the board, and he, upon further clarification, said they are going to have to vote on continuing the committee, and then at that point they can release applications. There was an intention to just release the applications for the next term, but upon staff advisement, they're going to vote on it at their August meeting, and then and likely would be approved, applications would go out then. So there would be a period between terms where there would be no committee and no meetings because they'd have to appoint the new members. So there wasn't that kind of application and appointment overlap that we were hoping, so that the new committee could just continue work immediately in September. But from my personal conversations with board members, I would bet that there would be another committee. I'll just say that. So it still has to come to a vote at their August board meeting.
You go now.
Go ahead. I have nothing.
I'll just state the obvious. If they're going to get a trail committee moving forward that supports their decisions, then I don't know. Matt, pick it up.
It's disappointing that the board has been aware of the term ending here, I think, for a good number of months. They've taken no action. I think that probably signals their feelings about trails.
And about us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what other comment I could make beyond that. Yeah, it's all pretty obvious.
Yeah, so, new business.
Anything else from any other committee members? Okay. Let's move along to initial discussion on the Bob and Chris Riley Park Master Plan. I figured I'd save you another 112 pages to the meeting packet and just link it. This has been out, I think, in the current version for a few months now. I know that they penciled this in to be discussed at their June meeting and then didn't get to it, or it wasn't actually placed on the agenda. But there was a public comment in the May meeting, I think, board meeting, that a citizen was interested why we hadn't commented on the trails in the master plan. So Matt and I figured we'd put it on the agenda for our meeting just to discuss if there were any comments that we wanted to provide directly to the board in their consideration of adopting the newest draft of the master plan. So hopefully you had time to skim through the important parts. Definitely, hopefully nobody spent the time to read through all 112 pages. If you did, gold star to you. But any folks have any comments or want to raise any concerns or questions regarding the master plan documentation?
I didn't really scrutinize all pages, but I did mention this earlier because I was actually on the master plan committee. But with the survey that you guys all did, one thing that came out was space for senior citizens to walk safely on a paved path. And I think that'd be a great place to do it. So I wasn't sure, because I didn't read all 124 pages, if that's been adopted. But as you know, coming out from that survey, it seems like that would be an important part too. So like a half a mile, something like that, I think would be a nice trail for senior citizens.
Yeah, it looks like on document page 24, numbered page 20. Somehow I just magically scrolled this page. It shows the trail surface types, and there are wood chip trails and gravel trails. I don't see any that are paved, so I'll go ahead and write that down.
Yeah, ADA trails around the farmhouse have come up multiple times in public comment, but I didn't see anything in the plan where those were picked up.
So, anything else that folks found?
And also one thing is, and maybe again described more particularly there, but one part I really enjoy about the master plan was an idea to have like a fenced dog area. And again, that's not like a dog park that we were talking about. That would have a path, like a walking area. I wasn't sure if that was clear in the packet, but that would help solve the problem of dogs off leash up there, because you can always go, oh, there's a great place for the dogs to go walk around in the forest and not bother horses and people, and children and things. So just wanted to kind of clarify that it's more than just a dog park. It was a really great idea to have. That solves so many problems.
Yeah, I know when I went up and met with the equestrian folks, that was something that they were talking about, having an area where dogs could possibly go off leash, but just, trying to reinforce by maybe creating spaces that are more dog friendly, that, on trails you really need to have dogs on leashes. So I think that's definitely something that also caters to folks to have another opportunity to take dogs to a park that isn't the dog park and have some kind of in-between experience of a field or some area that's, like you said, fenced in. There's a different experience between taking your dog on leash on a trail and then going to the dog park with a bunch of other parks. So there might be something nice in between.
Exactly. Great idea.
I never thought about that, but the Abbey is a good precedent. They have a sign up saying no dogs, and they complain about how many people ignore that. And I wonder, are dogs off leash a conflict with horses?
Well,
Yes.
I noticed my experience is mentioned this before, and I'm a huge dog person. I mean, I used to have 3, I have 2 now. But I've seen everyone, bike people when bikes were allowed, walkers and horse people all have dogs off leash up there. And so everyone breaks that rule. But I do remember, I've mentioned this before in that first meeting, that one woman did say that she could shoot a dog who was bothering her horse. And that was just a red flag for me. So I think that would be a problem. I think we get national attention if that occurred on our parks. Someone shooting a dog who's barking at a horse. So, and dogs are, you think they're great around everything, but they can get triggered really easily. So it's better not to fool around and say, my dog's great, but you're a dog person, they can get triggered. They get stung by a bee and then freak out. So, and chase a horse.
So I don't see, unless it's somewhere else in the document, what the total mileage is, because I don't know if I see any new trails. I mean, there's the let's see if I can do this quickly. On the east side of Parent Mountain Road, up in the upper left-hand corner there, and folks that would have gone to that work party might know, there's a trail that kind of comes out of that ravine and then kind of goes to nowhere. It's kind of a dead end. It looks like they might have connected that up by where the trail kind of crosses over Parent Mountain Road into that other parking lot. Looks like that might be one of the only additions of trails that they've added. There's a pretty good switchback there. Looks like they've connected that corner down to the bottom of the ravine. I don't think I see any other new segments. But it looks like that they still have maintained kind of that idea of larger or wider, mostly gravel, it looks like, trails around the perimeters of the fields, the farmhouse, and then they have some of those more difficult wood chip, smaller or thinner trails in the forested areas. I mean, are folks feeling that that's probably a good mix of experiences there? Should there be any, I guess, pose the question, probably easier to answer. Do folks see any alterations to maybe the types of trails in the wooded areas, since all of the wider, more accessible trails are in the open? Just thinking about, like, say you don't want to be in the sun, you're kind of limited to one experience, versus if you want to be in the shade, you're limited to another experience.
Can I just ask for kind of a quick little process check here, Quentin? What is our ultimate goal here with our feedback?
If there's anything that we have comments on to provide to the board before they vote on the final recommendation. So if there's anything that we as committee really like and think that should be definitely included, or if there's anything that we think should be considered for changes, I mean, now is the opportunity to voice those before it gets approved, if there are any. I mean, if this is the comments we have, then that's fine. Then we can just pass those along.
Well, yeah, and I agree with Matt's comment regarding ADA compliance. If they're not doing that, I don't think that's okay.
Yeah, it's really a question of, does the board want this to be a park that's available and used for multiple outdoor recreation opportunities? Or do they want to focus it specifically on one or two types of recreation? So,
Is there any provision in the master plan for dogs? If you mentioned it, I lost it.
Yeah, there is an area they've identified on the east side, kind of by the farmhouse, and the description is fenced off leash dog area, and then the standing rule within CPRD is that dogs must be on leash on trails or at parks. It might extend to all parks.
That's sort of like a bike policy, but
yeah, it references a policy? I'm confused.
Currently, the rule is and correct me, Brian, if it's, I think it's all parks, right? Dogs must be on leash,
It's a rule.
except for the dog
It
park.
is a rule.
It's a rule they can't enforce any more than bicycles.
Well, that, that's arguably not something that we would necessarily worry about. I mean, we won't be enforcing that, so, but from a practice of safe trail usage, I won't speak for all of you, but I think that would be a if you're using a trail, having your dog on leash would be good etiquette. So, unless we say otherwise, if you all think that dogs should be off leash, then
No,
I'm just saying dogs will be off leash if you use the Abbey as a precedent. They had a hell of a time over there.
I'm sure Brian can attest. I mean, the enforcement of rules is always a challenge because you're always going to have people in society that are going to decide to break rules. So,
I think that's why we have a police force and stuff like that, or whatever. I mean, we're a park district, and people run red lights, they, shoot dogs off leashes way down here. I don't know the answer. We're not unique. I mean,
No.
anywhere in the world has the same problem with adults not adhering to rules, policy, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. I think it's bad behavior, and it's very dangerous. I'm a big dog owner, and I know all the dynamics of that, and how could you ever enforce that? I don't know. You should diligently post it and whatever, but would the public want staff or employees of a public entity to be employed to engage with people 24/7 in every park? And I don't know, how that works. We work for the public. We work for, myself and you guys or whatever that live here in the district. So I don't know the answer to that. I think about it every day, believe it or not, because I witness it every day as a park supervisor. And yes, I've opened my mouth before and pool park or whatever, and tell people, it's posted right here, it's a rule to have your dog on a leash, well, and then take that feedback, whatever, but, yeah, I don't know the answer, because I can guarantee you 5 minutes later when I'm not there, the same adult takes the dog off the leash. So it's a challenge. I mean, it's, in public spaces that we face, it's the same thing with, you're in the Fred Meyer parking lot, why didn't you stop at that stop signs that are in that parking lot, or whatever? It almost run me over. But there's people that blow those every day too, and that's very dangerous also. So, that's not a great analogy, but I don't, as far as the public spaces, and as a staff member that's worked in public entities for 25 plus years now, it's very challenging to get people to, or it's just very disheartening, I guess would be a better way to put it, to witness people's behavior in all aspects of it. From don't smoke in the parks, don't do drugs in the park, put your dog on a leash, don't put sand on the splash pad, all these things seem true, but it's all the same level of how do you police that behavior? And I guess I hate to even think of that. Our open spaces have to be policed like it, but I mean, my gosh, look at Yosemite, the trash they pull out of there, and I mean, it's just, let's face it, humans suck, man. At the time they really do. It's not, for a non-adult way to put it, that's why we love dogs and animals so much, and plants. But I've said enough.
Inconsiderate people usually proceed rules. So that's behavior change.
But I do think it's the district's responsibility to post the rules, overpost the rules,
Overpost rules.
and I am diligently working on that, to get more
And I
signs out.
noticed too, watching, seems like the parks that say no dogs, sensitive wildlife environment, because a lot of the dog people are animal lovers too, and I think that kind of hits home a little bit, knowing that dog could run through a open field of quail who are nesting. Yeah, I've seen those signs are
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
powerful.
and we've used those.
Uh-huh.
We have them they're off the Gatlin Trail there too and stuff.
Oh,
But,
that's, I've heard about Gatlin
there's a
Trails.
couple areas
Doesn't
there.
work though, does it?
No.
Same
doesn't work.
thing, you know.
Yeah.
I love it.
Water
I mean,
dog on the
I like it that we're even educating people or making people aware of that, so that's a great point. Same people off the leash are gonna let their dog, they won't control the dog to go after the quail, for God's sakes, I think it's fun.
Any other things that jump out? If not, that's fine.
I think it'd be nice to have a trail accessible to ADA and or senior citizens. I love the Oak Savannah portion of it. I think that'd be shady, and I can see, you know, people, maybe slower people, really enjoy walking through Oak Savannah. You know, or using the wheelchairs through Oak Savannah. I don't know. 2 cents.
And I don't know the specifics of ADA to a point where I could definitively say, but I wrote that down. But it looks like the way that they've got that trail penciled in through that Savannah area, I doubt that they could make that ADA.
Okay.
But perhaps that could be asphalt, or I know in some places when you've got a natural environment around you, you're trying to protect, even boardwalk, but then that's even more expensive than asphalt, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. So
One of the things I've been fortunate to learn with some of my peers throughout the state that are in trails is that instead of the ADA, it's more ABA now. So all abilities per se, because ADA is very hard to meet that standard, and it's a moving target all the time federally or whatever. But the ABA, just to be able to, can I get from point A to point B and get back again based on my needs or whatever, if I have any type of disability or I'm old or whatnot, is very, very important to be more inclusive, I guess. So more people are looking at public entities and just parks being developed, but just including more people and thinking about that as we develop. And I think that's awesome, to even take that approach first. And then, yes, there are some maybe strict rules that make sure it meets compliancy as much as we possibly can so you can get your car, at least to the trailhead or whatever, and then be able to do, you know, your thing or whatever. But I think that's a great approach to do, and it's wide open that you can, let's not put a tree right there in the middle of this, or some kind of, you know, inclines or whatever, steps. You know, or if we have the steps and we have to naturally have the tear up that trail, can we side around it or
Yeah,
something that, you know, a helper could be, a job coach or something could be pushing somebody or whatever. So that's pretty enlightening, and I'm gonna really push that we do that as, on as many trails as we can there. At
What's
least sign it,
ABA
too.
stand for again?
I think it's all abilities,
All of it.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
and then there's the American Disabilities Act is different, so ABA is.
Mhm. And for it governs all public facilities, and it doesn't require that every public facility in all places is accessible to primarily people in wheelchairs. It's that you have some alternative. So say like at a park, obviously we can't make Bob and Chris Riley Park ADA all around, because that would require grades, I think, under 2% or maybe even less than that, paved. So it's more about, like you said, if you have a half-mile portion that is paved in less than 2% grade, then you have those difficult trails that do cater towards folks who are predominantly able-bodied and are looking for a challenge. Then, I mean, you can get pretty high grades on those. But so it's not anything, from my understanding, that CPRD has an obligation to provide a certain mileage of ADA in parks. It's more of like think courthouses and stuff like that where it really applies. But there are guidelines for, and it's in the Forest Service standards for trail development, that you can achieve ADA compliance in trails. But the reality is in the natural environment, that's not always possible. So. If there aren't any other comments, I'll just point out there's a pretty detailed budget, or at least an estimated budget here with line items for things. And I'll just point out that the project subtotal, so I'm assuming that's really all of your physical work and installation labor costs. So that's before all your general contracting and engineering, those types of things, contingency. That's the project as they presented it is $1.8 million with all the additional kind of ancillary fees that come with capital construction. The total then increases at in 2024 dollars. So I'm assuming that means if you were to lock in pricing this year, it'd be $2.7 million, escalating to $3 million in 2026. So it's a pretty substantial project. And I've heard through meetings that they would look to finance this through SDC funds that they have available. I believe Don said it himself that they have those funds available. If not, that might have been Matt telling me that at the park itself. So.
Tell me again what those funds would be used for?
So
It's on page
this is
38.
page 37 and 38 of the packet. It's got all the costs for improving current conditions, including the parking lots. So all the parking lots have costs associated with them.
Okay.
Re-leveling, automatic gates. There's gravel and chips. Those cost a lot of money. New structures for picnic table, shelters, Oak Savannah restoration is $76,000. A playground, a natural area is in there. A trail crossing on Parrot Mountain Road, 2 of those. Wayfinding signage, trash receptacles, bike racks, rule signs, benches, stuff like that. Fencing, interpretive signage, and then just general site restoration.
Those figures don't include the new additions that some community members are asking for, and maybe the board, based on watching some of the board meetings, it seems like at least Matt and Jason are pretty keen on adding in some additional equestrian facilities to the plan. I'm confused to whether they're going to accept the plan as it is and then just start rolling with things, or if they want to edit the plan. There was talk at one meeting of them going back, bringing this back to the contractor and demanding that certain things be added, like an arena, equestrian obstacle course, things like that. I don't know where that stands. I don't know if you followed that in the last meeting or not.
Well, there's nothing in this current master plan. I'm 99% sure. Unless it's at the very end. No, this is all opinions. There's nothing in the master plan right now, so they would have to add that. But yes, so when I was at the site with the question group and Matt, of course, none of this was voted on or discussed in an official meeting. That's what I'm about to say. There's a new 501c3 that has aspirations to leverage parcels of the west allotment, west of Parrot Mountain Road for a covered arena, an obstacle course, and specific enhancements to the parking lot to be conducive for facility use, special services, I think is what CPRD calls it, or say therapy groups or fundraisers like the mounted posse or sheriff's office or something, group rides, stuff like that. Obviously none of that's been discussed or voted on, so it's all just ideas at this point, but there's folks in that equestrian community through a 501c3 that have aspirations of bringing those things onto the property. Yes, I guess that's how I can answer your question.
So those figures, they don't include those, I don't think, is my understanding.
Correct. If there were additional costs associated with the park's, budget. All right. Any final comments?
Well, I guess my final comment, I guess, would be that plans are worthless. Planning is everything. I think that's President Dwight Eisenhower brought that from his military experience, that plans are worthless, planning is everything. And I think what he meant by that is that people sometimes fixate on the final document of a plan. And really, that final document is not the most important outcome. The most important outcome is the things we learn through the planning process. And so I guess that would be a question I have maybe for our group to answer at our next meeting, or maybe if we want to bat it around real quick, is what have we learned through this planning process, both about Crystal Riley's intentions for this property, about the different groups within the community who all have interest in using that property, and just maybe about ourselves, as a district, as committee members, as board members. I think asking those questions, what have we learned through this process, would be pretty valuable. I don't know if the board's interested in doing that, but I'm certainly interested in some introspection about the process, because I think that's actually the most valuable thing. The plan, very, very often in most organizations, a plan is going to be created, printed out a couple times, and it's going to go up on a shelf. And that's no dig on NV5, who's done an admirable job of walking this community through a process despite some difficult circumstances. But often plans, they sit on a shelf, and they're not 100% going to be fulfilled. And in fact, there's been comments at board meetings to that regard, that this is just a snapshot in time of what the community and the board wants. And so I don't know, I feel pretty confident that the process has documented a lot of things. The board has made some decisions that, maybe I personally disagree with, or maybe the community disagrees with. That's their prerogative. But I think we've captured enough information so that future boards can run with this plan and adapt it to the circumstances in the future. So I guess that's my final statement.
Anything else? All right. We'll close that item. Update on memberships. Already briefly mentioned this in Alan's comments. So I had conversations with Matt leading up to their June meeting, and there was never a kind of discussion around the need for a vote. So I think maybe there was an assumption that they didn't need one, because we're the only committee remaining from their original batch that has a term. We're the first ones to have a term up. But after the meeting, I went and clarified, and I guess staff have directed them to vote on it again. So we will learn of the quote unquote fate of the committee after their August meeting. But I know it is going. I've been told that it will be on the agenda. And then applications would open shortly after that, and they would determine the length those would remain open, and then appoint members potentially as early as September, probably for an October or November being the next committee meeting. So that's about all that I know on that. I did confirm that our terms end in August, because that's when we were appointed. So next month will be our final meeting of this current term. But I guess kind of just a question of understanding where we're at. How many folks are interested in coming back for a second term?
I would.
I don't know yet.
I think I want to volunteer like Brian. I want to be on that side.
We'll sit in those chairs.
Let's sit in those chairs.
Spectator.
I know there are a few folks that might be interested from the community. I don't know. I mean, we can all attest that it does take a commitment, and we are in some, I wouldn't call them heated, but debated topics, and folks are passionate in our realm. And I would also say on the counter end of that, there's probably not a bunch of people chomping at the bit to get on the committee. But I'm sure that there are folks out there that can join us, and potentially a diverse representation of folks. So that's an opportunity that also lies ahead if folks choose or choose not to reapply. So Any other comments or questions before we adjourn the meeting?
Thanks again, Quentin, for putting all this together. Another great meeting.
Thanks, Quinn.
Hopefully, I'll figure out how to replicate Aaron's mastery of note taking.
Good job.
And then a reminder, there's no board meeting this month, so if you make that a hobby of yours to go attend those, you have the month off. So our next meeting, our final meeting as this committee is August 14th. So thanks all again for all your work. Thanks, Brian, for coming.
Quentin, will we be looking at doing any type of formal recommendation based on that Riley discussion we just had?
Well, you know what? I guess if that's all that we have, if we feel that a recommendation is needed to bring forward the comments about having, I think the only real like change that we specifically mentioned was seeing if ADA or ABA, whatever Brian mentioned, trails could be developed around the farmhouse and or through the Oak Savannah, specifically for older and or disabled citizens. That would be the only, I think, difference that we really pointed out. If we want to make that recommendation, we could tonight if folks are comfortable. Otherwise, we could also just not, and I could just relay that in my comment if we felt that that was sufficient. But we can go either way.
I think it should be a recommendation.
Okay. I can take a stab at it since I have it in front of me. I'll make the motion to recommend to the CPRD Board of Directors that they include, to the best of their ability, alterations to the proposed master plan to include paved trails that are accessible to community members around the farmhouse and or Oak Savannah, period. Does that sound good?
I love that.
I do have one question kind of related to the ADA. A lot of families often will bring kids with strollers on trails, and often as those kids grow up, they may not be able to go for an entire long hike as far as on foot as those kids start to toddle and walk. I know my kids learn to kind of use either small scooters, and then they're not really bicycles per se. They're kind of like sit on top kind of. I mean, they look like bicycles without pedals, if that makes sense. So really small wheels. Kids kind of basically balance and walk on them, and it's just kind of an assistance and something different to get them over a longer distance. So I guess I have a question about whether those strollers, scooters, and those kind of Strider kind of scooter bikes, I think that's the brand name that we had, if those are balance bikes, yeah, if those are permitted or would be permitted, at least on a portion of the park. It just seems if we want to get families up there to experience, that was part of Crystal's vision, I think, was to get families and kids to enjoy that property, learn about the property. And so if that's a way that we can get more families and kids up there, I guess it's just a question of, does the bike ban include that type of device, or is it strictly mountain bike, or does it also include strollers and things like that?
You're basically describing mobility assistance devices, I think is what they're called.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be for necessarily a disability, although they can be.
Right.
Are those, for a disability?
But then again, folks that need mobility assistance don't have to be disabled, so.
True.
I mean, I guess I just don't know of a term that would capture.
Yeah.
We already came up with nature cycling, which, should be trademarked, but.
I think so too. I love it.
Just start with strollers. And
Yeah,
see
start with
what
strollers.
they say
That's
about
good.
strollers.
Well,
They have wheels.
they often when we ask a question or we make a recommendation, we're getting just kind of crickets. So, I just don't. You've got some other communication methods with some board members that are beyond our report, and I'm just hoping that we can clarify these things. so the community knows, and so the community, the people that are allowed up there feel welcome, and the people that aren't, it's very clear that they're not welcome up there.
Let me re-motion. Let me revise the previous motion and see if you folks like this. Recommended CPRD Board of Directors amend the draft Bob and Chris Riley Park Master Plan to include accessible trails around the farmhouse and or Oak Savannah for citizens with mobility issues and families using strollers.
Yeah, strollers, yeah, I don't know if scooters and balance bikes,
Would
you
we
know, if
want,
they're considering that a bike. I mean, I know that the issue was mountain bikes, but you know, a teenager or an adult on a mountain bike to me is different
Very
than
different.
a 3 or a 4-year-old on a balance bike. You know, they're not going to pick up a lot of speed. They're right next to their parents usually.
Okay, so if I said using strollers and then continue balance bikes and non-motorized scooters,
Yeah.
that has been motioned. Is there a second?
Second,
Awesome. That was Michelle, right?
it's me.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, passes 6-0. Are folks happy about that being our recommendation for changes to the draft master plan? I think that was really the only one that was a discussed change. I can relay the other comments to them as well, but are we comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Then, if there's nothing else, I will move the motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Second.
Does that need to remind me? Now I'm really questioning myself after last time. Does that need a vote?
I don't think
Cindy wants to hang
Can you
out for
ring a
another couple
bell? Ring a
hours.
bell or something.
Nice air conditioning here.
That doesn't need a vote, right, Matt?
I don't think so.
No.
You don't think so, or you do?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But if you want to make it official, you can.
We all
I'm
vote
fine.
to end
We
the
can not.
meeting.
It's just 6 of us. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.